Well, thank you for coming. This presentation is more a conversation than a presentation. The idea is to have a forum, a quick discussion where we can share our experience of using technology in the field. But before we go in this conversation mode, I just want to frame a couple things. And here's the agenda that I'm proposing is just make quick introductions, share my goals and expectations about this forum, and then hear from you guys. I'm going over some definitions so we can have like a common vocabulary for this conversation. And most of the conversation will happen in continuums. I draw some continuums, and we're going to use them to guide and to funnel our conversation in a way that can be more productive. Darren is joining us with a couple of demos. He has some very interesting toys, and I brought some toys too. And then finally, we're going for the closing, okay, and trying to draw some conclusions. Any questions so far? Good? Everyone can hear me very well there? So in terms of introduction, I want to start saying I'm biased towards the proper use of technology. I went to the college in industrial engineering. I thought the technology was going to solve the problems of the world until I went to this other part that is like more the soft skills that can solve the problems of the world. But I'm trying to leave my bias behind and just be a facilitator of a conversation if that's possible. I was involved with technology very early. I sent my first email like I was 10-year-old, like kind of a lab rat for a program in Brazil that was trying to replicate the ARPANET. That was the predecessors of the Internet in the United States. That was a long time ago. Then I went to the engineering and worked in computers towards the engineer side of things. And then there was this thing called Internet coming, and then I dove into it because I saw that way before was really Internet. I worked in some interesting things that at the time I really liked it. Nowadays I look back and I think, well, what I was doing. And they were like integrating first enterprise resource planning, so like ERPs, big softwares for steel mine, you know, like you're trying to do just in time, you buy iron and stuff and you produce the steel, how you can do this in the best way. Then I kind of go to the e-commerce side of things and then in e-business and internationalization, globalization of software and work for big companies like creating software from multiple places, different cultures. Then I quit everything. And after 7 years without vacation, I decided to start a sea kayaking company and start to research. And then I was like, well, these guys have a great business. I think I'm going to work for them. And I found NOLS. So I'm here now. Do you want to introduce a little bit?
Oh, sure. I know many of you, not all of you. So my name's Darren Wells. I've been a NOLS instructor since 1999, and I worked for NOLS Professional Training for a little while. I was a program supervisor at the Rocky Mountain branch for a little while, and I also wrote the NOLS Wilderness Navigation book, and I'm just finishing up a new edition of that book that incorporates communication technology in the wilderness, and so. So I was talking to Drew and Marcio, and I'm here to just share a little bit of that research that I've been finding when we get to the demos piece. And I run the outdoor education program at Central Wyoming College. I teach in this building right over here. So I'll be happy to talk to you about college outdoor programs and NOLS if you're interested. That's me.
So in the beginning, I didn't think about how can I bring technology for no course because I want to leave my past lives way behind me. You know, like anything that smelled like technology was like, oh, that has a bad taste. But my goal here is that we can share our experience with technology in NOLS courses. And I know we have things coming to NOLS courses that we were not used to 10 years ago. And one quick example, I know that NOLS Mexico and some folks in NOLS Amazon, they are bringing Kindles to the field. So that's one resource that's available, and then there are many other resources there. So my goal again is just talk about this, hear from you guys, what are your experience, positive, negative, enabling, or not so good. And the expectations, we are not going to change any protocols. We are not discussing risk management issues. We are basically sharing our common experience. We can, if you remember the classes we teach about spheres of influence, we can have concern about technology being used in those courses. And one example is GPS, but there is proper forms and mechanism to influence it how we choose to not take GPSs anymore, keeping using GPSs. So this is not a forum for that discussion. This is just sharing ideas and thoughts. Okay? And to set the tone, I really found that quote pretty inspiring for me. Is like connects my two big phase of my life, like working as a wilderness educator and being a guy that was somehow in the technology world. It's like humanity is acquiring all the right technology for all the wrong reasons. So I found that very inspiring. I want to start with that goal. As I said, we want to have you see I'm going low tech here. We are going to have this discussion. I just want to share some common terminology and go in definitions first. So what is technology? And I look in a dictionary and I look around trying to find things that could help us in this conversation. And one is amazing, clear definition for me is the practical application of knowledge, especially in a particular area, as medical technology. And the other one is a capability given by the practical application of knowledge, like a car fuel saving technology. So when we talk about technology, we tend to get in a wilderness classroom, we tend to get our mind stuck in these two most common technologies here. It's information technology and communication technology. Information technology are those things related with computers, softwares, hardwares, those systems, and how those systems integrate. When we talk about communication technologies, how can we close the gap, most likely physical gap, not the communication gap, between two people using technology like a radio, a sat phone, or a cell phone. In mind, we are going to talk specifically about information technology and communication technology. We are not going to talk about the use of nylon, polypro, aluminum sticks, or cans, or protections that 20 years ago when you climbed you never heard about. Now they are everywhere. So we're not talking about that side of technology in those courses. We're talking about this other one, information and communication. And before moving to the next phase, I just want to share one concept with you guys. Did you hear before the concept of a single-use device? Do you know what is a single-use device, Mark?
Well, I think maybe a GPS would be a good example. You just use it for location.
Yeah, and then the classic one is this one. And I start to find in my students that they don't, especially the younger generations, they don't use these anymore. And NOLS is not in the business of selling watches, neither cameras. But there is a trend, and I don't want to go in numbers on the studies, that the single-use devices are disappearing. And then you start to have multiple-use devices. They're watch, alarm, camera, book, iPhone, a bunch of stuff. So just keep that in the back of your mind when we progress here. Questions so far? Comments? Additions? No?
I heard on NPR that the watch industry is actually doing very well, but it's because the watch is now a fashion accessory,
Right.
not a timepiece.
So this is one of the continues that I want to work with you guys to facilitate this conversation. Okay. When we talk about information technology and communication technology, most of us has some concern. How can I use this better? How can I ban this for my course? How can I integrate something between? The way that I want to facilitate the conversation is, let's imagine the NOLS experience. What is good for us in terms of NOLS experience? What do we think that's positive? What do you think is that we are really value in this area? And then when we talk about technology, I propose this continuum here one goes from that specific technology or that specific device is disrupting what I believe it is the NOLS experience. In the other side of the things, the continuum is, I believe that this specific device is enabling my students or the instructors to provide a better NOLS experience. But again, before moving there, let's talk about what is the NOLS experience for you guys. And then that's the time that you guys can talk a little bit. So what is the NOLS experience for you?
Wilderness.
Wilderness. Great.
Yeah, taking students out of their normal cultural context.
How can we put that in one word? Is isolation or?
Novel.
Huh?
Novel. Yeah.
Novelty.
Yeah, community building experience, like exercise and building a strong community. So, yeah,
Community building.
Focus energy.
Focus. I'm here. I'm present. Being present.
Education.
Education.
I often think of it like there's a problem-solving element. Like a problem-solving element.
A
but
problem-solving
with
element.
Simple resources.
With simple resources.
Yeah,
And that would be a problem solving without resources, without all the information, so without all the pieces for the puzzle. Is that what you're trying? Huh?
Without Google.
Without the Google. Good.
I think skill development.
Skill development. And then we can go way more than 6 and 7. Dave, please.
Connection to really basic needs. So focus and energy on things like eating and staying warm and so on.
Learning to deal with limits.
Learn to deal with limits. Limitation or not enough resources. Joe?
Self-reliance.
Self-reliance.
How you doing, man?
Dealing with limits.
Limits. Dealing with limits or limitations. And then self-reliance. I think we can keep going on this direction, but I think that most of us are represented in different stances here. Is someone not comfortable with this? I want to add something that's very important, like fishing. Oh, great. So let's get one device. This is a NOLS experience. This is what important for us. And now using the continuum, I want to get input from you guys. If I bring a Kindle, and it's just a way to read books nowadays. If it was just an electronic book, that's great, but this Kindle here can access the AT&T network. And once I check the weather, in a NOLS course with this guy. And I didn't send an email, that was my boundary, you know, like if I send an email, I cross the boundary that.
You can do that though?
Huh?
You can do
You
that?
could,
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks of batteries. And then I don't know if you guys saw this before. I'm going to just pass around, and I have one of my favorite books here. That's Medicine for Mountaineers. I can write. I can do a lot of stuff. But let's imagine that was just a book reader. Just pass it around. So it's just a way to make books more portable. It's lightweight. What do you think that this is in the continuum that I proposed initially between disrupting and enabling and those experiencing? Which side of the continuum is more towards this or that?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Go ahead.
Are you an instructor or are you a student?
That's a very good question. What do you think about that? Why does it make a difference?
As an instructor, you're role modeling.
Yeah. As an instructor, I would say I'm going to assume that you have some maturity to make sure it's not a disruptive.
Yeah. Can you teach that material too?
Go ahead.
Another thing is, I mean, because we're there to teach, if it can help us do that more effectively, it can be enabling for us where it wouldn't be for the students.
So, go ahead, sir.
I think it's both, and all this technology is always. It depends on how we frame it. It depends on how we allow our students to use it or encourage our students to use it.
Good. So I think that most of us will admit that we have double standards in a NOLS course. And I think that starts with equipment and go to rations, use of technology like cell phones.
But I can imagine if there were no money involved, we could issue one to every 10th group with the whole NOLS library on it and nothing else.
Yeah. So let's try to separate the questions between instructors and students, because there is a difference there.
Maybe a good point about the difference is that the NOLS experience is different in some ways for instructors and students.
Exactly.
That's the root of the difference, I think.
So reframing the question, what do you guys think about the Kindle that only allows students to read books affecting their NOLS experience with the entire library? Huh?
Incredibly enabling.
Incredibly enabling.
They don't drop in water.
The problem that we had in Brazil last year was we only have 1 kilo and they couldn't like,
Share.
But we had
And
all
become
the
an exclusive relationship with the Kindle.
we had all the readings and all the NFBs for us. So yes.
So if you have a single-use device, it's kind of clear for me, like, this is just a book. That's kind of fancy and can carry a lot of books. And we are usually using a NOLS course, we feel that's more enabling for the NOLS experience. If we already use it, it's just a new way to do what we did before. How about, go ahead.
Just it could be disruptive, like you said, like if you lost every book, you had 0 library all of a sudden, that's pretty disruptive as well.
Yeah. And then that happens with the paperwork too in the backpack, because you can cross the river and do like something that Drew doesn't like so much, and then and then it's gone in course library, or at least the instructor's library. You were going to say something? Good. So how about the Kindle also can check the Google? Disruptive. Tends to be disruptive, huh?
Well, it could work both ways.
Going both ways, why?
Well, some students are accustomed to learning that way, by Googling things, by accessing information rather than memorizing it. So it depends on what they're Googling. It's hard to control, I guess, is what they're doing with it, but it could be either.
Yeah.
I might argue the habit, though, of literally knowing that you can look it up versus getting in the habit, like the habit of mind, right? Of like, oh, I have limited information, limited resources, how do I solve this problem? I might argue just literally the habit of having it, just knowing that it's there versus not being there, like that's enough to make it disruptive.
And that's kind of my own thing that I read the other day that's saying we have such an amazing amount of information in our society nowadays that we are forgetting how to make decisions. Because, you know, sometimes you don't have all the pieces for the puzzle and keep looking for the pieces doesn't mean that you're making a solution. Are you going to say something, Rick?
Well, I was just trying to listen. But
Okay.
I saw an article about that. It said our brains can hold like 2 gigabytes, and that amount is being made in seconds every day in the planet. So we're becoming cyborgs because in order to stay up with and operate in this society, we have to access that other information. We can't memorize it all.
Okay.
Another just quick addition to that, one of the recently is how groups and how, like, say someone in a marriage share information, and how they can study socially how, like, you know, one partner will remember this thing, another partner remembers this thing, and they sort of symbiote that way. Where interesting way to think about how we, as the NOLS groups out in the field, are kind of working like a network in some way, which is just another analogy.
Good.
I think it also changes how people find things. Like if you don't have the Google and internet, you have to go to like your instructor or to other students or to look things up in an index or table of contents. I think people forget about that.
Yeah, it's like problem solving, critical thinking.
And community building. And just not be doing anything. No, we don't. We just need to sit here with myself.
My sense is in 5 years, a school like NOLS will be handing these out to each one of our students, and there will be text on there kind of like what Rick said, we're gonna dictate what text is on there. There's going to be selected music. There's going to be videos, and whatever else. I don't see how we can get away from that if we're going to call ourselves an education school. Leading education school.
Two last ones. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We have a lot of students who thrive in those setting who have trouble in school traditionally, and a lot of times those are students with learning disabilities. And with the Kindle, I'm not sure if they're able to, but I see enabling a learning through text, which is hard for a lot of students with learning disabilities, by having it read it out loud or being able to plug in your earphones and listen to it read while you read along. So to just help get over the educate, being able to process the information through the written word.
Good.
Yeah, I just had a thought just that was talking about like the Google access or like being able to reference things and look stuff up. I think that we need to respect that we're looking to create this organic problem solving experience, but also recognize that there is that paradigm shift of the way things are going to be operated. I think that we're all kind of hitting on that, but like we're looking at this balance, and I think we're also talking about like how appropriately it's going to be used. But it is a shift in like how
The word is happening.
things work. Yeah. Nowadays.
And then I have a question for you guys that will help me to move to the next steps here. What do you think that the GPS are in this thing here? This continuum. The GPSs that now we're not arguing if we should have a GPS in schools. We have it. Now that they are there, and you're teaching land navigation, or how do we call it navigation? The CTAC course?
Sea navigation.
Sea navigation. We're teaching those things, navigation itself. And how do you think that the GPS is in this continuum and the impact of the NOLS experience? Rick?
I think it's enabling.
Does anyone have a GPS?
I think like many technologies, the GPS, yes, we have it because we would be negligent if we didn't on a lot of fronts, but it's neutral.
Yeah.
I think the GPS is how we present that technology and how we teach our students to use it, under what conditions, and how much do they rely on that.
Yeah, they have to read the map first.
You have to read the map
They have to be good at reading the map before you.
So I got a rhetorical question. Why don't we get rid of the maps?
It's a pretty significant technology advance.
I think the reason we don't get and should not get rid of map and compass is because it presents our students with an excellent cognitive skill development exercise.
Yeah,
so
because
it's sort of like math in college. The level of math that we all have to take in college is far beyond what we'll probably ever use, but it's supposed to teach us how to cognitively think and reason out problems.
I would say the reason we don't get rid of the map and compass is that we as instructors don't have the sort of deep lifelong relationship with the landscape we're traveling in that we could travel without the map and compass either. Like we're starting from that point. But the map and compass, I think, builds a much deeper relationship between the map in your mind and the landscape and the GPS. So given where we are, we probably need the map and compass. Whether we need the GPS is another higher question.
We actually used to do courses in the winds without maps or with inadequate maps. They were pretty much a joke. They were wrong.
like we do in Amazon, like we do in
Yeah.
Chile,
It's,
like we do in
it's
England.
possible to do. It has some rewards, and it's very limiting in other ways. You may not, it may take a long time to get somewhere, but you'll learn other things in doing it. It's a trade-off. As far as the GPS, I find it disrupting at the beginning of the course if the students have access to it. Towards the end of the course, it's something that they're ready to progress to.
So the last three now. 4. Go.
I would argue GPS disrupting from a practical example of, I can't tell you a number of times I've been like, yeah, how was your ISGE? And they come back and they admit that they pulled up the GPS at one point. Fair enough, but in my mind, I'm like, if they had struggled through that test without us there, without the GPS, that's something valuable.
Okay. Mark, and then we go this way for the last two.
Well, I was going to say, times that it is disrupting is if the skill set of the maps is not there first. Because I think what we're talking about here is a set of skills outside the technology. It's being able to navigate. And so I think the maps are important because it's a progression. Right? I mean, yeah, many of us probably could get around those without map. We've either been there or we know like general landscape. But yeah, I think it's disrupting if you jump right to the GPS. When you don't have some kind of progression set up.
Cool.
For the next year?
Dave and Phil. Go Dave first.
He basically made my point about the progression. Stuff goes wrong. You need to be able to fall back to basic stuff in GPS between GPS and maps.
And I was just going to build on it a little. I mean, I totally agree with it connects you to land more to use a map, but I actually think it's safer to use a map. It's safer to have both because it's a redundant thing, but you can't. The GPS doesn't really tell you a good route to take. It won't necessarily. I don't think as well as a map help you understand features and terrain and risk in the terrain.
Okay, I think we discussed enough like the Kindle, the GPS stack, and I think we are ready to move to the next phase of the conversation here. And I have another continuum. Remember I said that we are going to be talking about continuum. Let's just discuss here, you as instructor now, managing technology in the field. And the continuum is physical removing the access to that technology versus verbal contract. And then we can make a pause maybe for these folks to finish that important task there.
My experience has been that if they've got it, they will use it at some point.
Yeah, and I think that's very polemic. When I'm going, remember we are talking it continues with the devices. So the device that I'm introducing now is the iPhone. And then I'm going to replicate the student experience that I just had in my last course in the Southwest a couple weeks ago. I worked at this course for veterans in the Southwest, NOLS Southwest. The client was the Sierra Club Military Families Outdoor Program. And then one of the vets brought the cell phone and I said, oh, you cannot bring the cell phone. Remember our conversation? And then he said, well, I don't want to bring it because it's a cell phone. I want to bring because I download natural history books here. And it's also in your equipment list saying that you need to watch. This is my watch, this is my alarm. So, okay, what I did was the easy route. I said no. No? I said no. Sorry, you got the idea. This is a cell phone. I really trust that you're not going to use it, but don't bring it. And that was fine for that moment, but I could see initial frustration that could be higher in some individuals than the other ones. So using the iPhone and the story that I just shared, physical removing was something. Do you feel comfortable going to the verbal contract? Yes, you can read your natural history books, use your alarm, use your watch, but don't dial. That would be not an option in terms of our protocols nowadays, but once create that hypothetical situation. What do you think? Can you trust your students in a verbal contract?
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How many of the places where we actually run courses would be able to make a call?
Okay.
All right.
Some will be able.
So, I see this a lot on rock camps where you have to figure out what you're going to do with their cell phones, because in most places doing rock camps, your cell phone works. You can sit there and talk on it in your tent.
Yeah.
And so I think that I usually check with the I team and see what we want to come to. But sometimes the verbal contract is, I say, okay, you can have them. I don't want to ever see you use it. That's where.
And if you use this, what happens?
Yeah, then I'll take it away. Other times they're like, hey, we're going to leave them in the van in a bag, and if you need to use it, come ask one of us. And you can go off and use it. But I don't want to see people using it. So I've used that verbal contract. It actually works pretty well.
I think if you're going down the path of a verbal contract, you have to assume, no matter what they tell you, they could do anything.
Yeah.
They could be taking photos of your daily activities and
Facebook
uploading them to
post.
the internet.
Your class could be on YouTube.
Yeah. Let's go here.
I think it's right. Anytime you bring something, but then commit to only using it in a certain way, although it's capable of being used in another way, you accentuate the contrived nature of this whole situation. And in a sense, a NOLS course is contrived at period, because we don't need to go around doing these things at all. But by choosing to go do them and then leaving everything else at home, you can kind of set that contrived part aside and engage in the experience. So I think it would be hard to stick to that sense. And maybe like sat phones for iTeams is a good example of that, where when in my short career I've seen it go from where sat phones were something we would use only in an extreme emergency to turning out that they were actually pretty handy for some logistical issues, to today where we straightforwardly use them for logistical issues, just because it's quite contrived not to, and it makes sense to do, so that creep happen. Not that that's a good thing.
So
I think.
build a wall a little bit, and
Yeah.
you just drift.
It's just going to happen, I think.
Yeah. Dave?
Cortez burned his ships at the beach so that there wouldn't be the possibility of going back. And I'm not suggesting I would ban all technology, but if I've made that decision that I don't want it to be relied on, or I don't want it to be distracting, then I would tend to go toward the no, because I think the presence of it changes the decision making and the risk taking and so on.
Yeah, and I was just building on that too, because I was just going to say, this is a product I've been reading lately, but our emotional relationship with technology is a real thing. You know, and I think its physical presence has some sort of meaning here. It changes what we're doing here. It changes how we're relating to the people and places around us.
I was just gonna say, like, if you're gonna go all the way to physical learning, right, which many of us have done, we can have this conversation with our students. Like, if they're capable of understanding why we're going that route. They might not agree, but if we talk about it in terms of like what's right there, and talk about how it's gonna limit community building, it's gonna limit presence, it's gonna limit dealing with limitations, and that by signing up for the NOLS course, they've already committed to like fully experiencing those things and gaining some self-reliance from their emotional attachments to technology. They might not like it, but they can get on board with that, like eventually.
And then you think that's easy to do that in the beginning or towards the end of the course?
I think it's much easier to do and get buy-in for like on a semester progression.
That you could do in the second course.
Or where you like take it away at the beginning, and a hiking section is like really conducive to that, or a winter section, or some sort of wilderness setting, and then they have the experience where all of these terms make sense to them, that then you can explain it. And on like a 30-day standalone course, it's harder to explain in the beginning. So maybe just setting the principle and then having the conversation in the course.
Yeah. Comments?
I struggle with this because I think a lot of times, increasingly, I make decisions based on what I think is best for my students, entirely based on my value system. and increasingly, I'm asking myself, why don't I let my students bring their cell phones? And if they want to use the cell phone, they can use the cell phone. I mean, is that if that's detrimental to the experience of others, then we can discuss it. But if it's, am I making that decision basically because I think that's a bad thing for them to do?
And then just one clarification that can help in terms of the hardware. You can just do this in an old iPhone, and now, you cannot talk anymore. The AT&T thing is here. Now this is just a watch, camera, iPod, alarm. But again, we're not trying to solve the problems. We're just trying to have a conversation. So I was regret in the field when I thought, actually I could just get the shit. And this guy was going to be reading. So I think we tend in these situations to drift towards black and white rules. And I think it's very situational. It's very, like I totally can see after building confidence and trust between the students and the I-team, and then the sense of community, that some tool like this could be beneficial for some people in some courses. Okay, any comments there?
Do those phones pick up internet anywhere?
It depends of your plan. Some will have a data plan and you can get the internet if you have a cell phone reception.
I mean, I can speak from experience that the last thing as a evac coordinator you want to hear, and Drew can help you with this one, is you know, I get a phone call from NOLS Rocky Mountain, hey, there's been a student injured on a river course, we dealt with it. We're going to have the parents call you because we don't know what's going on. Great, no problem. I was doing a bus drive at the time. Yeah, what I understand is your son has been injured. I understand the injuries to his hand. He's on his way back here with an evac driver. I don't really know what happened. And the next words out of his father's mouth was, well, let me tell you what happened.
And he knew it.
Because his son called him on his cell phone. Yeah. And right, so what we're doing is we're relying on them to use their judgment when they think they should use their phone, and it doesn't always mesh with when we think they should use their phone, and that complicated things dramatically. And I know we have a policy where there are no cell phones in the field.
Yeah.
The cell phones in the field.
Yeah, we have a policy.
Yeah.
Oh, bots in the field.
Right.
Bots, show bots.
Yeah. So I mean, I can tell you that is not what we want to happen. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It was interesting too that we had to use his phone when they got to the locator to put it because the instructor's phone didn't work.
Absolutely.
We left the satellite phone with the course.
Yeah.
So,
trapped in the route.
Yeah, well, right. That's right. It's trapped in the route. Sorry. And while it's super uncomfortable to have the father say, "Let me tell you what happened to my kid."
Yeah.
Maybe we just maybe we just need to get around it. Maybe we need to rethink that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
This is interesting because Doc, you and I just debriefed a course where this happened to me.
Yeah.
Where
I was gonna let you bring that.
Yeah. And I made a decision because I got tired of being contrived. Where I was like, okay, guys, on this section of our course, there's a month-long outdoor educator with a climbing component. Let's not use our phones for these reasons. What I'm telling you is you can't bring your phone, but you guys are adults. And so, of course, the phone shows up and they use it. There's 3Gs, everything's happening. Someone was making a real estate deal, I think, during the course. I'm like, well, I'm not going to get in the way of this other stuff. I actually forget the details of that.
Well, the kid was evac and then invac,
And he brought some back. But what I think this presents is this really interesting challenge to us as instructors that we now have to be able to be more articulate and more clear about our thoughts on the repercussions of these tools. And then also, it kind of implores us to be more specific and articulate with our students about the impact of these tools in our modern times. Because it's totally current.
And it's a totally good segue for me because I think if you look all in this dimension here of managed technology from the physical removal to the verbal contract, would be naive not look at that in the context of the modern society. When we're pretty much developing these people leadership skills, their soft skills, people skills, and when they were developing them for the primitive world, that's great. You know, you're in a primitive setting. It's wilderness, very low complexity. Developing soft skills for that situation makes totally sense, but are we preparing these guys to be just leading other NOLS instructors or being working in a wilderness environment, or are we also preparing them to live in a society in a modern world with technology? And I think that's the verbal contract enable these guys with better soft skills to deal with the harsher environment, with the outside environment. But you need to be very intentional about that. And there is no right or wrong answer. It's just like a complex issue.
But the details of this one was the kid who got invac decided to break up with his girlfriend during the course.
That's what happened, yeah.
And then he was a basket case for the rest of the course. And that's what I mean. We're allowing him, oh, this is an emergency. I need to call my girlfriend, right? As opposed to, oh, I've shattered my hand, right? Maybe there's everyone's emergency is a different emergency. This 19-year-old kid's girlfriend was an emergency.
And I mean, maybe I need to do a better job with that, Doc. I don't know.
And he was a mess.
He was a mess in a lot of ways.
And the rest of the course was dealing with him at that point because he was falling and he was fast, right? And so I don't know that it's a lot easier to just be like, oh,
so this example here was interesting because it gives something in the middle way. You know, just midway you take the ship out. There was a lot of veterans in the course. The course only for veterans. They're all veterans, and he worked in the intelligence community, and he heard my conversation with this guy who wanted to bring iPhone, when everything was calm, he came to me like, "Do you know how we solved this in the Army?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's going to go in a bad direction. We just break the iPhone." No, in the remote camp in Iraq and Afghanistan, we just put this 50-pound box in the middle of the camp. Boom. And if you don't have the key to communicate out of the camp, doesn't matter what you do. Your signal just doesn't get out. Yeah, just scramble everything. It's like locks the thing. Well, we're not thinking or suggesting to bring the NOLS course this thing and just put it in the campsite. Like, good luck trying to get a signal here. But I also think that there are situations and there is technology available out there to enable us to make decisions and restrict the technology in one direction that helps us to achieve our educational goals. And then maybe is the future communication device we bring in the field, you have, a flow chart there. Is this really an emergency? Yes. Did you break up with your girlfriend? Yes. Telephone is locked. My friend is stuck in the mud for 8 hours. Okay, cool. Signal goes up. If you use the blue sky picture, you can create that, but you need to be intentional about what you want to create. Because if you don't know your intention and just reacting to this new word, you're just going to go to the, okay, we are very good in primitive settings. We are very good to physically removing all that, but maybe we are drifting away from, can we teach these guys how to deal with, I broke up with my girlfriend, I'm not going to call now. This can wait. Questions?
Well, I'm not sure before when you first started talking about the soft skills and being able to do that in the technical, the modern, regular world. I'm not sure exactly where you were going with that, but because I feel like in some ways by not having, like you think about food, right?
Yeah.
For me, first time I went out on a long expedition and having to give up certain types of food and certain things, when I then got those things back, which I'd always had in my life, but I went back to being able to have them, I was more conscious and aware and deliberate, and I got more value out of them because I had been deprived of them. So I'm not sure that, I think we can still give people valuable lessons about technology by not putting them in a place without technology.
Yeah. And yeah, totally agree. And one example of this is if you use navigation again, you can go across the Wind River totally without maps. That would be a pretty good primitive skill. You just lose the sun and you just hike in that direction. Sometime this mountain range is going to end. and then you can put the maps and teach a little bit about, you have more control where I'm going, and you have compass and you have GPSs, and then I think that we need to also step ahead, this is my opinion, and start to teach people how to use those things. One classic example is PLB. I was volunteering in search and rescue in Colorado during like the 6-year period that PLBs and spots start to show up. The first time we got a spot call from the mountains, that was a pretty big deal. Everyone has in their mind that someone was dying, it was a life or limb situation. Let's get our stuff together and go. Before I moved to Lander, Wyoming, a year and a half ago, we got a PLB call. We were like, is this someone that just lost a dog again? Is this someone that the car doesn't turn on at the trailhead? And I think as a leader in the wilderness education, I totally agree with what you said, but we also could teach people how to use better those resources so when they go back, they're responsible. Doesn't mean that the resource needs to be on the course. Good.
It might be good to start by looking at the educational goals of the course. On a standard NOLS course, being away from the distractions of society is a big part of the experience, and it's a big part of the education. It's now very easy to bring a lot of those distractions with us. It might be that if you're doing strictly a skills seminar or something like that, might not be an issue. You're not dealing with being away from society as much. They're just focusing on skills, but that's a different educational goal.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I go back always for what's the intention, what's the goal. When you create curriculum for a course, you need to have your goals and intention first. And then you go how you're going to get there.
When I wrote the cell phone policy, we had a communication policy position statement for many, many years. It goes back to the 90s. And then, I think about 8 years ago, or maybe closer to 10 now, we added the cell phone part. And the cell phones were single-use devices pretty much back then. And when I was thinking about it, I went and read the Wilderness Act. And to me, I tried to connect this wilderness with what Dave's saying to what we're trying to accomplish on the course. And that was my basis. That was my grounding for trying to come up with some language on it. It's obviously changing. I think our position statement needs to be revised to reflect these multiple use devices. And this conversation is really good. But I still feel personally that this wilderness aspect of what we do is key, and I would hate to have our students getting on Facebook and talking to their girlfriends or boyfriends, and having all these relationship issues outside of our contrived wilderness experience.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Rick?
I don't know if this is the best time to share a couple examples.
I think that the radio example you have in the park course.
Yeah. So at NOLS Pro, we tried. We don't have this figured out either, and I think it's great that we're trying to come up with some vocabulary of how to even have this discussion. But we think about what are the educational goals, what does the client want, and so one example is with the wildland firefighters. They each have a radio when they're out fighting fires, and when we take them away, they experience all this cognitive dissonance. Like, this is so unsafe. How can you manage risk if you only have one satellite phone? We're hiking in 2 groups, and we're used to having 15 radios. So, of course, I worked last year. We said, okay, well, let's bring 2 radios. We'll bring one in each group, and we'll bring a satellite phone, and we let them play with it. And this whole soft skills learning curve happened. It's like they decided, okay, we're going to check in every hour on the radio. And they checked in every hour on the radio, and it took about 15 minutes. It's like, so where are you? And then both groups are map reading, and there's, well, the little bend above the N and bend. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so then the debriefing that night was like, well, that was horrible. It's like, let's only check in every 3 hours. And by the end, it was, let's only check in the hour after dusk if something goes wrong. And so they went through this whole evolution, but they got to play with the technology that they use in the field, and they're actually using repeaters and that sort of thing. Another example is glacier mountaineering in Alaska with the Naval Academy. Is we tend to get an instructor coaching a student on using the ground-to-air radio to talk to the bush pilots when they're coming in to do resupplies. And so you get a handful of midshipmen who get this experience, and we've shown this to people at the Naval Academy, like, oh, this is great, practicing calling in airstrikes. And, I mean, it's not the same, but it's serving the client's needs. It's serving the educational goals of the course, which is really neat. And the last example is kind of different, but with astronauts, we've come to at about 7 o'clock every night. We'll turn it on for 15 minutes, the satellite phone, for incoming calls. And they're practicing their, I'm going to forget the name, but is it the CAS? You have somebody who's watching out for you when you're deployed. And so they have that when they're on a NOLS course. There's somebody back in Houston who's watching out for these astronauts. And this happened to John and I when we were in the field. A CACO officer, yeah. So a CACO, each of them has a CACO officer, and we weren't doing this on this course. We worked, and they ended up sending out search planes for us, and we called in on the satellite phone. They're like, yeah, there's a hurricane bearing down in Houston, and they were evacuating Houston. But since then, what we've done is we just allow incoming calls for 15 minutes per night. And if no call comes in, then we turn off the satellite phone. And we really haven't had many calls, but it's basically for a family emergency.
In Utah, there were a lot of calls.
Yeah, now that was, and so that you're right. You're exactly right, Doug. So we had
a wrapped canoe.
We had a wrapped canoe on a NASA course.
And the instructors were like, okay, wrapped canoe, we'll figure it out, no big deal. They got a call that night from a astronaut manager, I don't know what.
Monica Schultz.
And she said, well, how's the course going? The guy's like, oh, well, we wrapped a canoe and it's lost. We can't get it off. And the instructors are like, no big deal. Another course will come down and unwrap it later. Her interpretation, and I get this, I wake up the next morning, the instructors have not called me at all.
Right.
Because they're like, we can manage this in the field. We'll figure it out. They call I get an email from, I'm on the list of people dealing with the astronauts. It's like, a canoe has been lost. We're unaware of the condition of the astronauts. Holy crap! And no one's called me.
Yeah,
I'm the evac coordinator, you know. And you know, if you go through one of these briefings, like these astronauts aren't supposed to like sneeze without you being able to clean it. And they were fine, you know. But there was a disconnect between what we do and what they do. And the
Yeah,
instructors
two
are
different
like,
risk management cultures.
yeah, like,
and that led to a whole bunch of discussions about protocols, and she apologized for that.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but the point of all these examples is being intentional with the educational goals, and trying to come up with something that makes sense for it. We have not arrived, and it's different for every client, and I'm sure we have not arrived for base camp and wilderness courses for catalog students either. But I think the discussion is really important.
Mark? So tell me if this is ad nauseum, but this is kind of what I want to speak to is, Rick, you're dealing with like a really specific clientele, but what I've been thinking a lot about recently is what Drew was saying about how, and you might get to this, how do we define wilderness and what has a place? I've started using technology media. So I've been taking on wilderness courses, catalog 1 month wilderness courses. This might be a little cutting edge, a little rogue, but like later on in the progression, to bring a third-party voice that isn't myself and my instructors like yapping at the students the whole time. I'll play podcasts or some kind of other presentation on an iPod speaker that we're going to break out once, and afterwards they start using the NOLS language. And you're like, well, does this fit into our mission, or does it not? And that's the conversation I'm interested in having. Is actually this has great success, but here we are listening to a bunch of ones and zeros from this little Apple product. I don't know if it fits or not, but you know, now the students are having this discussion of whether or not that was helpful. And I'm curious, like, where we're going to go with that.
My immediate reaction to that, if I understand it right, is that you're using technology to enhance the course, but you're still confining the course to they're not communicating out.
Yeah, there's no communication.
So they're not distracted by where they are on the trail or whether their equipment breaking up. But you're using the technology like you might a stove or a whiteboard or book.
Or a whiteboard.
And I might just add to, in my mind, I've been looking at these handheld, these like palm-sized projectors. And the wheels are turning, and I'm like, okay, iPod Touch, handheld projector, Quincy. I'm like, okay, here's an avalanche class. I could never show you an avalanche otherwise. So I think it's the same. That's where my mind goes. I'm like the same sort of question.
So I'm going to propose one thing, that we pause the conversation now, because I want you to add more variables, and the more variables will be presented by Darren. He has some things to show us in terms of the technology devices that he's finding and exploring and playing with. And let's see this, and then we go back to wrap up this conversation.
So we have about a half hour left, and all I really want to do here is make sure that we all understand all of the many different kinds of technology that could be showing up on courses, and you know, whether or not to use it or how to use it. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I think it's helpful if you understand the difference between these satellite communicators that we're starting to see on the market now and the PLBs. Because they operate a little bit differently. So by satellite communicators, I mean the Spot Messenger, which is the most ubiquitous of them. And then DeLorme now has a product called an InReach. I'll show you some pictures in a second. And Spot also makes another device called a Connect. And then Marcio was talking about the PLBs. So PLBs are personal locator beacons. If you've worked in Alaska, you probably had them on your course. In NOLS Alaska, we use McMurdo Fast Finds. Drew, does any other branches use Fast Finds or the R&B does? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Pretty much.
So are they everywhere?
Pretty much Fast Finds are the ones we use.
Okay.
Mexico uses Spots. Yukon uses Spots. Because of you have to register them in the country that you're in. Patagonia uses satellite phones, but they're looking into using these.
Okay. So these PLBs, they differ from the spots and the inReach devices in that they operate on this dedicated satellite constellation that's called COSPAS SARSAT, and it's been around for many years. It's been tested over and over. It was built by NASA, but in cooperation with a number of other countries, and we know this works. This is kind of the proven constellation. Like, you talk to people who are involved in search and rescue, they're gonna talk to you about that. This is ACR is a brand new company out of Florida that's trying to compete with McMurdo. They're British, so you may start to see these rescue links. They're about the same size as the Fastbind, like fit in the palm of your hand, about the same weight. These things you pay for them, the $240, $250 or whatever, and then there's no monthly bill, there's no annual fee. Use it in emergency, and all it does, it's just a red button, right? You press the red button, I'm in big trouble, come and get me. Signal goes out, and it eventually finds its way to 911. These GPS messengers and SAT communicators are different in that they use, it's a commercial constellation. So it's a commercial satellite network. One of them is Globalstar, and the other one's Iridium. So these are sat phone companies who are, well, they're looking to make some more money, obviously. But they're the ones that are kind of driving this market. And the way these work, if you press the red button, it goes to some privately held, central headquarters down in Houston, and then that person makes calls on your behalf because they have your GPS coordinates. Sort of like an evac coordinator, I guess.
He's an evac coordinator for hire.
Yeah, evac coordinator for hire. The Spot Connect, this just came out this past year, and you've probably seen it outside in all the magazines. This was the first device that actually talks through Bluetooth to your phone. So it allows you get an app on your smartphone, and it allows you to use your smartphone like the regular orange Spot device that you just saw. You can send out custom text messages that you create before you go into the field. You need to have an internet connection. Honey, I made it to the lake. Everything's fine. But when you're in the field, you're not typing that. You're not texting on your phone when you do that. You created that before you left. You're just hitting the go button. Yeah.
We use that at the university. We send the messages out to parents. And the reason we do that is because that involves them into the trip. They get highly invested in the program because they can see where their son or daughter is at any one time. It's sort of a marketing ploy in some ways.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feature for parents because if you use this the right way, this technology, they can track them on a website. They know where they are.
So basically,
for some parents,
some of them can send out an I'm okay message, whereas the PLBs just send out the
exactly. That's a key thing to understand. PLB, single-use device, right? These things can be used different ways. And so if you want to have the tracking feature or customized texting, or you're paying a monthly fee for that service, right? Sat phone company, they're selling you bundles of texts. The answer, DeLorme worked closely with Spot, but then they decided they were going to develop their own product, and this came out, I think, August. DeLorme's inReach is kind of a one-up on the Spot Connect because this is the first device that allows two-way texting, right? So it pairs with my phone. And this, if I have this thing paired with my phone properly, I can send a text from the field through a commercial satellite constellation. I can also receive a text back to my phone from total wilderness, no cellular connection. Right? This is a big deal. Questions?
Yeah, quick question. How do you
We'll get there. That's a great question.
You can solve through your phone on Facebook.
Exactly. Yeah, good question. Just pause for just a second. Were you going to say something? They pair by Bluetooth, so you can have this thing in the top lid of your backpack, and you're just texting.
It's just a wireless connection between this hardware and this hardware. From this close.
Yeah.
This does not need phone calls.
No, you cannot make a phone call with this.
It's not just data.
You can't make a phone call, but you can send data with this device standalone. So even if you say the phone falls off the cliff, you can still press the SOS button on this thing, and it'll operate like the spot. It'll send your message out. And again, it goes to some central headquarters. It's a private satellite constellation, not Coast-West Service.
But that's a receiver.
This would work both ways.
It receives a message.
That's right. So Spot's gonna come back with their device next year. Is going to have this technology, and the writing is on the wall. So, but again, you're paying a monthly fee with these things. Okay, so I guess where I want to go next is to help you understand so these are emergency communication tools that we were just looking at, right? There's also new navigation tools that I think anyone who's a NOLS instructor needs to at least know about these. And again, you can have a conversation about whether you want to use them or not, but at least you'll know.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Go there? There's another satellite phone that's coming, and it's called TerraStar, and it's the size of a smartphone. It works off a geosynchronous satellite that's parked over North America, and it's supposed to allow you to text, voice. It's a tiny little thing, and it's a satellite. It works through AT&T, and we can't get it here, so I have to try to get one to test it. But I'm not exactly sure where the company is in terms of their financial stability, but that's where satellite phones are going. And ultimately, I think they're a lot cheaper than the Iridium or the Motorola phones that we have. I think they're like $700 versus $1,400. So these things are great, but we may get in 5 years to a point where everybody gets a satellite phone. We get multiple satellites.
Apple is already done that all.
Okay. Right. So that's where I see it.
Okay. How many of you have heard the term augmented reality? Okay, great. That's just what I was looking for. Good. I'm pretty good at it. Not since college. Okay. What was that? We're not talking about psychedelic drugs here. So this is a little, I don't know, it's like a 2-minute video that I want to show you because I think understanding what augmented reality is and how it works, I think you have to have some serious visuals. And I'm gonna pass around some toys in a second that are sort of navigation apps that use this concept of augmented reality. But first I want to play this little video. This is Google promoting these glasses that they're trying to bring to market maybe next year. And they're just like the Zeal Optics has the ski goggles that have GPS location information in your field of view while you're skiing. They're kind of hard to actually see that data. You have to kind of look cross-eyed. I've talked to some people. It's not like it's blocking where you're going or something like that. But anyway, this the sound isn't great, so you may have to just listen closely here. Just a couple minutes.
Meet me in front of Strand Books at 2. man, really? Hey there, guy. Hey there, little guy. Sweet. Remind me to buy tickets for Monsieur Gano tonight. Where's the music section? Oh, yes, this is it. Is Paul here yet? Hey, dude, how's it going?
Want me to show you that new place I was telling you about?
Sure.
This truck's really good.
Hey, just a second. Cool.
Good to see you again.
Thanks, man. See you, dude. Whoa, cool. Take a photo of this. Share it to my circles. Oh, I'm running late. Music, stop.
Hi, what's up?
Hey,
Hey.
you want to say something cool?
Yeah, sure. Have you been to lately?
Yep. Okay, here goes.
It's beautiful.
If I could suggest you guys look at the video where they do that, they have that same video, someone shows all the pop-up ads that would also be a That's what's really good, people.
Okay. One thing about technology I think is worth pointing out, you can love it or hate it, but you cannot stop it. And it is coming. It is coming. Maybe a little while. So a couple things I want to pass around. So augmented reality, what you were just seeing there is anytime you have a heads-up display, a real live view of the world, and then you have additional data that's presented to you in your field of vision or in your ear. And you know, the military, a lot of technology, military and gaming industry have driven a lot of that. But it is now becoming real. Oakley has come out and said, oh yeah, we've been working on this for 5 years, and we've got our glasses too, and we're going to compete with Google, and I'm sure there'll be a slew of others. But how augmented reality is already available to help with navigation is here. So this is my iPad. This app is there's two augmented reality apps that are available for navigation right now, and this one's called Spyglass. I'm going to pass this around in a second. But what Spyglass allows me to do is, as I hold it up, it's using basically all the hardware in this iPad, and with an iPhone, it's using all the hardware in the iPhone. And I didn't know all the hardware that was in my phone or iPad until I started doing this research. There's this thing called a gyro compass that's in there. Of course, there is a GPS hardware in your phone, and there's a digital compass in your phone. So that stuff is all in there, and augmented reality apps engage all that hardware at the same time, and the camera. So what makes this so unique and different from just using a GPS is what I can do with an augmented reality app is I can enter a waypoint, and here I have NOLS headquarters building. As I pan around, these different waypoints that I've entered show up in my field of view. I can point it down at the dirt, and I can see, you know, where the moon is on the other side of the planet, as if I could look through the Earth. I can see where Gannett Peak is in my field of view as I pan, a marker comes up with an arrow for Gannett Peak and tells me Gannett Peak is right there. So I know exactly where it is. But with this app, in this one field of view, I get my GPS location, my speed, distance to destination, my heading. I can also see, as I tilt this, the slope angle of any hill in front of me. It's a sextant, it's a rangefinder, and it's all in one screen. So it's the Terminator, right? So I'm gonna pass this around.
Can you explain the flippy side?
Yeah, I have it. This one, unfortunately, this iPad doesn't have a GPS in it, so it doesn't. It's not using all the features that Spyglass offers. But one of them is when it's in this upright position. I get the rotating compass dial and all that navigation information I was telling you about. But when I hold it level to the ground, it immediately switches to an overview topo map with an arrow showing me my location, and all the other waypoints that I've entered. I'll pass this around. The cool thing to do with it is sort of hold it up and just pan a little bit so you get a feel for it. And then I know we're probably not gonna have time for everyone to see that, so I have it on my phone as well, and I'll start this one over here. We'll just do the same thing. How much does that app cost there? $3.99. Okay, so here's this is the exact same thing. It's just the phone version. So if you don't see it on the iPad, you see it on the phone. Dan, what was it called? That one's called Spyglass. The other one to check out is called Theodolite. Theodolite is it's a surveying instrument. Okay, so important question came up earlier, which is how in the world would anyone power these devices, especially on a 30-day NOLS Force extended expedition? Because you can imagine if the camera's on, the GPS is on, the gyro compass, blah, blah, blah. If that's running and you're using it for navigation, you've got about 2 hours and it will totally drain the battery. So there's a lot of people who stand to make a bunch of money from these products. So there's portable power people who are trying to keep up with these advances. And there's really 3 companies that are making they're making solar chargers that are made to go in the field and take a beating. One that you've probably seen before, Brunton makes it's called a solar roll, and that's a thing that rolls up. I should have brought it, but I didn't. It's flexible. Those are called it's a thin film photovoltaic cells, and they're about half as efficient as these. These are the ones that are on top of the Rocky Mountain branch. These are monocrystalline photovoltaic, and they're like I say, they're twice as efficient, but they're heavier, and they're glass, so you gotta be careful not to break them. So there's essentially there's a couple different setups. You can buy this. I'll just go ahead and start passing this around. This thing is made by a company called Joos, Joos, and the model is orange. This has a battery built into it, so it's kind of just one unit. You bring this with you in the field. It's 24 ounces, so it's a little heavy. The other portable power people products that are out there will look kind of like the solar roll. It's that flexible photovoltaic cell stuff. But then you'll have a battery that plugs into those panels. And there's also on the market there's one that has actual rechargeable, like AA's or AAA's packets. So instead of it being contained like that, say you've got a standalone GPS or I don't know, something that runs on batteries, you can take those out, plug them in, and use it that way. These cost, I think that one retails like $150, something like that. Brunton makes a combination battery, and they have their new photovoltaic cell package or whatever, and it ends up being like $400. It's about half the weight though, but it's bigger. So there's all these trade-offs, you know, weight versus efficiency with those things. Yeah, John?
Darren, I know solar panels are a little better now, but a few years ago we tested a bunch in Mexico for our sailboats, and those thin film ones from Brunton were really shade tolerant. Like they still charged in shade, and that's a big problem we've had. And so it's good to test all this stuff in suboptimal conditions and see if it still works.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I did a trip in the Tetons last summer, and I brought along one of those solar rolls, and I had this idea like, you know, I'm just going to strap it on the back of my pack, and while I'm hiking along, it's going to, you know, charge my phone. And I had it connected directly to my phone versus going through a battery. And the problem is that the changing angle as you move around to the sun's rays dramatically reduces those cells' ability to absorb that energy. So, you know, that dream of having some device charging your pack while you hike, we're really a long way away from that. But when you take that panel and set it out in the sun, you know, in the morning you're making your coffee, or when you get in and set camp, it takes about an hour to fully charge. It'll recharge my iPhone 5 times. But the downside is it takes a long time to recharge these devices. So the way that people are using these things is they set them out in the sun to charge during the day, and then they plug their device into a battery at night while they're sleeping, wake up in the morning, and it's recharged. It takes about 2 hours at a minimum to fully recharge an iPhone or iPad. Other questions?
There's also a device coming out in the pipeline that uses your motion, and charges a battery. So it's like a gyro, and if you walk, it charges a battery. It's not commercialized yet, but the military's working on that technology.
Yeah, this stuff is out there. I mean, you can imagine as soon as those Google glasses hit the market that students are going to be showing up, ready to go, with their fancy glasses on, and you know,
they're going to be prescribed.
We need to know what we're going to say to them.
I still make coffee with Violetti
though. I'll pass the baton back.
Great, thank you. And I think it was great to see like some of you guys' reactions when you start to see that was kind of funny. Some were used to, and it was like, really, this thing already out there. To close this session here, this conversation, I would like to share some of my concerns and where I'm looking for increase my awareness when I'm teaching those courses. For me, is the tricky spot or the trap or the potential pitfalls are when these two technologies that we talked today, the communication technology, the communication device, are overlapping with with each other, and creating this thing. Okay, this is not more just my camera; it's also this and that. And that, by the way, like Edmilson said, the prescribed Google glasses, you know, is the only glasses that I have. But I also see a huge opportunity. And I think that's this overlapping here could be either good or bad, enhance or disrupt the nose experience. But I think that if you're intentional and you're planning ahead, there is a chunk here that's beneficial that according to your educational goals, you can avoid this kind of disruption and enable the experience. But that's not an easy task, and I didn't come here with black and white answers. I think it was more open the eyes and a discussion type of deal. And I like to use the metaphor to explain what I feel and what I think about that is surfing. had experience surfing here before in kayaks, boards, or surfboards. When you're in the wave, you can have some control where you go to. But if you're paddling behind a wave, the only thing that's you have control is keep your eyes for the second wave that's coming. And I'm going to give you the size of the wave that's coming. In this first of this month, for the first time, there are more smartphones than regular phones in the United States. 46% of the people that own a phone own a smartphone versus 41% of the people that own a cell phone is just a cell phone. Americans between 18 and 29 years old, 72% of those own a smartphone. And this is not only American problem or US problem. By 2016, 1 billion of humans will have a smartphone. And that is impacting the watch industry. They're going to the fashion side. Is impacting the computer companies because they're selling less computers. It's impacting everyone. And I think that if we are very intentional about our educational goals, in those catalog courses, in adventure courses, in those pro courses, in WMI courses, because we also teach in the classroom, and the disruption of these things in the classroom is bigger because they are more available in a urban setting of a classroom. If we're not very clear about the educational goal, I think we'll be paddling behind the wave. Instead, surfing the wave and going the direction that we want to go. Could be physically removing some of these equipments. Could be find a lightweight version of the military box to put in the same campsite, or could be creating verbal contracts for some technology. Okay. Thank you very much for your guys' presence.